Good afternoon. We are lighting the candle, a world that works. And I'm Bill Carell. We've been doing this podcast for almost 2 years now, it seems, maybe a little bit longer, but I'm here with my good friends, Lisa Sheehan, Jan Jeremias, and also Ken Caputo. And all of us are students of life, very interested in what's the next moment all about if we can experience it without preconceived notions or notice when we do. And it's really got an awful lot to do with speaking empowerment into existence in any moment. And our goal is to deliver empowerment to you, our lovely listeners. And we are really looking forward to chatting with each other. And what I do every week is I kind of come up with a topic or some words or whatever, and then everybody else is very supportive and in terms of growing the conversation out of that. And we may stay on my topic for just 30 seconds or less, or it may go on for most of the time that we're speaking. And today, I think what I'd like to do again, so we haven't talked before. Does anyone have a particular subject that you would like to discuss? And I think, Jan, you had mentioned something a couple of weeks ago, which I've completely forgotten what it was. And if it comes to mind, I'd love to hear it. But anybody want to volunteer?
Yeah, the what I sent was harmony versus balance. That was what
Harmony versus balance.
yeah.
Okay, that's our topic.
Okay. Well, okay.
Well, as long as you've got the floor, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I'd love to hear what everybody else has to say, to be honest.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago that I heard about somebody saying that it's better to be in harmony than in balance because balance doesn't give any leeway. Harmony allows for other variables to come in and still be still be a cohesive symphony, so to speak. Where balance, it has to you have to have a number that adds up to 100 basically.
I think that's one definition. Ken and I can both show you where you can have balance that's unmessable.
That's what?
That is unmessable.
Unmessable.
Being in balance doesn't mean that you have to accept or be moved or be interrupted from what you're doing by the new thing that comes in. And you can always be in harmony with it, even if it feels like it's an attack. And you know what I'm talking about, Ken? I'm talking about the intro to it is we're going to do something now that's going to make you look very good, and it's going to make me look potentially very bad. And it's all about, the distinction between thinking you have balance and then actually having durable balance. If you know what I'm talking about, you want to pick up the ball from here, or do you want me to say more?
Oh no, it's well, it's interesting because I think it's number one. I think there's a lot of different ways that people relate to the idea of balance. So, and is it a static thing or is it a dynamic thing? And like for me, it's a dynamic thing. So it's balance isn't it's things that are kind of working together to regulate each other into something that functions the way it's designed to. So like when you stand on one leg, your muscles don't lock to hold you there. There's all these micro movements and micro adjustments that are happening constantly to give you the semblance of being in balance. But what's funny is the harmony word. So I have a client that I'm working with right now who has this program called Harmonetics, and it's and we're actually just about to launch and hopefully make a significant impact on veterans and their mental well-being. But he comes from a background of he's a doctor. He's also he was a cellist for the London Symphony Orchestra. So he has this this background of medical qigong and all these other, tai chi and stuff like that, acupuncture, and also is a musician. So for him, harmony is when you tune yourself so that everything resonates in a congruent way. So it's literally like being in harmony in your body. And I found that fascinating because it was, if you have that feeling, balance isn't even necessary. You can be out of balance, but in tune. It's like, it's just been an interesting, I've been learning a lot from him as I've been helping him, like organize the program so it can be taken to scale. But it's funny. I haven't thought about that word very much until recently because of my experience with this guy. So now.
Kind of neat. All depends on who's speaking and who's listening.
Mm-hmm.
And who the speaker is when he's speaking and who the listener is when he's listening, or she, or they. The funny thing is that for me, when I hear both of those words, I hear it almost in the same quadrant as where we spend a little bit of time talking about boundaries, where there's almost a conceptual notion of what harmony and balance are that may or may not, in fact, be anything different from Inigo's statement frequently. I do not think that means what you think that means. And in terms of thinking in terms of a way to be, and it actually is very significant in conversation and language to give someone a concept which is almost Poanish, if you will, the whole Buddhist asking a question to which there's no answer, and to really engage in considering the question, there's an opportunity for personal transformation. Not to get the answer, but to go through the struggle and to try to hold counter thoughts at the same time. And some would say that discord and the abrasiveness of trying to argue two thoughts in your mind is actually the harmonious way to be, where you're present, you're completely present in that conversation and working your butt off on both sides. First, to just remember what the thought is. And then second, to kind of like play it out and say, well, what if it's not that? What would it be? And I enjoy watching people who are doing that. And I can actually sometimes tell because their facial expressions are very dynamic. And you see this in kids an awful lot, where they hear a word for the first time. I can still remember in third grade when I moved to Ledyard, Connecticut, and they had a different vocabulary, in New England than I had from either upstate New York or Cheyenne, Wyoming. And so we went in, and a third grade teacher said, we're now going to discuss some things. And I didn't hear DISCUSS. I heard another word. So when I got home, my mom said, well, what'd you do today? And I said, well, we discussed it a whole lot. And I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out why that word was being used, but all my friends were doing it, so it must have had some value. But while the conversation was going on, and Mrs. Gertner said, and this is what we just discussed. I thought to myself,
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? So harmony and balance. So when Ken just now got up and walked away, and 3 out of the 4 frames had human beings in it, there was an interesting opportunity for there to be a demonstration of harmony and balance. and
Mhm.
the images were at a state of imbalance, and yet there was still harmony. And I
Except for his
had
camera
the sense,
his
whether
camera
it's
trying to
true or
find him.
not.
Yeah. Except for his camera trying to find him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
and I still
me
had the
trying to
sense
find my
that you were
headphones.
listening. Yeah, there you go. But anyhow, so devil's advocate, pretend one of them's better. Can you argue or for either one of the two being better? Lisa, you started that with the conversation of someone saying that being in harmony is actually, I think the word was better
I believe
than
so.
being in balance. Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
what
know.
would be the evidence for that?
Well, I mean, we could go right to music itself. If you're not playing in harmony, if there, then it just doesn't sound correct. But then that's jazz.
Or Shostakovich,
But
the
to be
exploration.
well, yeah, put it the other way. If everybody just played in balance, it wouldn't even make sense in so many ways. If everybody just played the same note or the same volume, the same beat, it would hardly be a symphony. So to create harmony in your life makes it much more enjoyable to feel and hear and see, and
We're
to me, the
almost pointing
balance.
to, yeah, but harmony, the chords don't have to sound good for it to be in harmony.
No,
There's a whole kind of, yeah, and again, jazz music where no three notes are played in succession to each other, like that's the game, or 5/4 timing, in Time Out, Dave Brubeck. It's really kind of interesting the first time you hear something like that. It's almost like an acquired taste that sort of gets under your skin second, third, or fourth time, and now I can't get it out of my head.
so I guess it's subjective too. So harmony is subjective to you, and what I mean. If if you keep up with the music aspect, or then what you like to hear, like you said, it's an acquired taste. It might not be my acquired taste, but the people playing it know what they're doing, and they know that they're in harmony for the moment. They're doing what their music intends them to do, kind of thing, which then takes it out and puts it back into balance almost.
Are you familiar with Thelonious Monk?
I know but I wouldn't be able to speak.
So there's a movie. Dexter Gordon actually played the saxophone player in that movie. It's called Around Midnight. I highly recommend it. It's a really great opportunity to see several different things. First of all, the guy was a drug addict and a drunk till midnight. And then he was channeling, sounds from God.
Hmm.
And there are so many people that they have one place where they're either in balance or harmony. And a lot of the music that they played, a lot of the sax stuff is discordant in terms of timing and tempo, discordant in terms of the piano playing in the background, and marvelous to listen to and close your eyes. Jan, are you ready to
Yeah, I've just been
jump in?
busy listening, and I went and looked up like the word origin, which the it says literally means like of joining. So bringing together, that's harmony. And literally the root of the AR in harmony means to fit together. Where balance to me seems much more like individual pieces trying to maintain balance and not necessarily joined in a cohesive way. I mean, from that word origin, I mean, that's what I would take it, so
I like it.
as opposed, so if we think of ourselves in harmony, it means sort of like all the parts of ourselves fitting together, as opposed to balancing the different parts of ourselves. Which seem much more, I have this aspect of myself and I'm gonna kind of bring it under whatever, kind of try to bring, if it's too amplified, try to bring it down. And if I have another part that needs to be expressed, allow it to come up, but they don't necessarily come together.
Harmony feels like flow state. Just reflecting from an athletic perspective, thinking about, when you're racing mountain bikes, you're throwing yourself almost intentionally, and the environment is taking you in and out of balance, and you're hammering through single track and you're getting jarred. But if you harmonize, your breath, your heart, your hips, your legs, your shoulders, everything's working together to create a feeling of balance in an imbalanced state. And it only happens when everything, your mind, your body, everything's working in a rhythm. And I remember my teacher used to always say, if you weren't experiencing balance, then something's overworking or something's underworking. But then in a lot of athletic stuff, you're intentionally overworking or underworking depending on the situation. So I guess I'm just kind of thinking that's like, yeah, harmony feels like what you experience when you're in flow state, state of high performance where everything just is working together regardless of the pressures being exerted internally and externally.
Hmm. Let's go with that.
Yeah. And I thought about that in regard to not only athletics. So I
No,
think
yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
when we're in a zone and we're really like, I don't know, we're just what I want to say on, like all the parts of us are participating in a particular thing we're doing. And our mind is maybe there, but kind of gets out of the way.
Hmm.
Then, you're totally in harmony. I mean, like, something can happen around you and you're so not influenced by it. And I think I was a fine art minor, and I used to think to myself when I would get in the zone of painting, like there could be music blasting, like anything could happen around me, but I was so into what I was doing and I was in perfect harmony with the situation and whatever was happening around me. I was just, it wasn't like I was oblivious to it. It was there and I was probably taking it in, but it wasn't kind of altering that state.
Hmm.
I was just doing an experiment. I was doing something completely unrelated and listening to you speak. And what
And
I kind of noticed about that was my attention was more heightened and drawn to your voice than it was to what I was typing on a document. And the kind of neat thing is that first I noticed what I was trying to do on the document more, and then I noticed your voice more, and then I became very interested in the meaning of the words that you were speaking. And then I sort of like got to a 50-50 attention where I was doing both at the same time. And so that sort of played out into getting into a flow or getting into a state of harmony where multi attention thing, whether it's time slicing or whatever, it wasn't discordant like it was when I first turned the screen over and got on the other thing. Like the first thought I had, do you think they'll notice that I'm actually not being present right at the moment? Just the natural little things that pop in, little triggers that pop into the mind. And the whole notion of harmony, and it kind of like one of those two words or both of them, familiar with equilibrium, right?
Mhm.
It's almost like if you've got a convex, concave, convex. So like you got a bowl, and where is the liquid going to want to go? Or where is anything in that bowl going to want to go? To the lowest point, right? And if you slosh it around and then set it down on the table, what's going to happen? We have all this discordant activity for a while. And then once gravity takes over and it goes to the resting place, is it in balance and in harmony at any time during all of that? Or is it just when it's now no longer any motion in the bottom of the bowl? And I think our lives are a little bit like that too. The concern about what's happening sometimes becomes more overbearing than what's actually happening.
I go back to like homeostasis again too, like the same thing, but how much the body and the brain love to be jostled about, and to get back to a point of homeostasis again, or equilibrium in other ways. But our body, our beings actually need that sort of jolt in order to live well, or live, period. You and Betty,
like,
Ken and Bill, you both deal with a lot of people. What do you think that you are striving with your clients to be more in balance or in harmony?
well, I just want them to be there and be present and listen. Whatever that is first is it's like to give your attention to what's really going on and not what your story about what's going on in your mind. And when you can do that, a number of actions or powerful things that you can do will present themselves, mostly by asking questions. So from a harmony standpoint, my favorite sentence is, it's mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter.
But there's a harmony in you helping them discover what that things that matter are, or there's a process that you're getting them to that. To me, when you speak, it sounds like that you're bringing them into harmony with themselves, because there is a discordance.
Yeah, knowing full well at the beginning of the conversation what I'm saying sounds like, nails on a blackboard kind of thing. But I like the whole notion of being in a helpless and hopeless state with regard to how you regard your life and how you regard the bad things that have happened to you, and be open to the fact that none of that is really going on right now. For you to be powerful, you're going to have to marshal your thoughts and put them in a category of thinking where you can choose to continue that, or you can choose to do something else. And that's a nutshell of probably the first 6 weeks worth of working together.
Yeah, it's a little different for me. And it's funny because as we're talking about this, I think if I had to put it in that framework, the first part is getting a clear point of reference of what balance means to them at this time. So, and a lot of times that can express itself in a lot of different ways. Like this harmonetics gentleman, he's been doing this by himself for 40 years and he doesn't want to anymore. That doesn't feel in balance. It's not him one-on-one treating people. He's had a wonderful, run doing that, but now he wants to be part of something bigger. He wants to teach other people to do this, and he wants his weekends with his wife. So, so he's recognizing and redefining what balance means, the way it expresses itself through the lens of his work. So we start there. And then from there, I guess what a lot of it goes into how do we create a harmonic ecosystem for his work to express itself. So, and that's everything. It's what are your needs? What are the needs of your potential clients? How do these things work together so that you're not overworking and not getting paid enough, or you're not underworking and asking too much? And it's like it's an ongoing discovery conversation. It's not like you make a decision and then live with it,
Mm.
but there is this I'm going to have a conversation about this conversation because I think you would really appreciate it. But it's like looking at all of the elements and the concert you can create, and the way that resonates. And the other thing we talked about I talk about with people a lot is getting clear on who's listening to the song and not trying to sing a song for everyone.
Mm.
Just be clear on who enjoys resonating on or vibrate that level of vibration, that tone, and sing to them, and it's okay because I see this a lot, especially with wellness practitioners. We all know that we can help everyone, but we can't help everyone unless we focus on someone.
Mhm.
So otherwise you become too scattered and your message becomes so watered down that no one really knows what it is you're doing or why they should be involved. So so I think we actually start with balance to create a framework within which we can build flow, we can build harmony that's sustainable and hopefully multi-generational.
So, Lisa, I got to turn myself in. I was more or less giving you an argument to make you right. The whole empowerment thing with people in business, who are most of my clients at this point. I'm not teaching any classes to either children or adolescents or high school or college kids. So almost everyone that I work with has a very long list of things that they're not getting done.
Mhm.
And for the most part, the words that I said to you before are not necessarily words that I would ever say to one of my clients. However, what it all comes down to is being able to get to a place of thinking clearly and seeing what's actually going on in front of you, or for them and for me. Because the more clearly I can understand, through a series of events and trials and different things that we do together, and work where they go back and they start to define, on paper, in language, spreadsheets and all that sort of thing, what their business is doing, and representing their teams, and the folks that are uh, getting the job done and the ones that aren't. I have to go through a process to get them to the point where they know what I knew before they hired me. They do have a problem, and they are it.
Mm.
So there is a process for bringing somebody around to where they can be self-critical, but not in a damaging sort of way, not
Mhm.
not in a bad and wrong sort of way, but self-critical in terms of evaluating performance and output and that sort of thing, to where something else can actually occur, and it's not constantly going back to a habit that they hate but have no other choice, and can't let anybody else know that they're not sure they're doing the right thing or not, because someone told them that's not what leadership is. So language and redefining all of the terms of how they conduct themselves, and getting them to share and divulge the little secret triggers and sentences that are actually running them in the background, and then being able to distinguish that from, there's really nothing going on in the world right now until you open your eyes up and can focus on it. And when you do see that, the next question is, now what? So it's taken me a year, with my current client that I'm giving about 80% of my time and energy to. However, there's nothing better than being in a relationship with someone and realize that coaching and mentoring is not doing something for someone and then telling them how you did it. Coaching and mentorship is to have them be on the court doing it, and first make some pointers, not more than 5% at a time, really small stuff. And then after a while, they don't need that. They've internalized that process for themselves, and they're looking to the outcomes, not as good or bad, but that's what I did this time. Anybody ever tried drawing Charlie Brown?
Mhm.
I got quite good at that in grammar school. And neighbors and family friends would say, "Hey, I need you to do some Charlie Brown stuff for a picnic that we're going to do. We're going to make a big old banner." And I had more fun doing that. But I had to get some proficiency with it. And I had to go through a whole period of time where everyone said, "That doesn't look at all like Charlie Brown." And I had nobody other than myself who really, I had decided that I wanted to be able to draw Snoopy and Charlie Brown. And that was it. I still can draw a pretty darn good Red Baron.
We'll judge that later.
Okay.
So Jan, I was curious too as to how you think those two words pertain to science and yoga. Thinking.
I went to yoga first. Yeah, balance to me is the action, like of trying to bring multiple aspects of is the to me, balancing the different things that I need to do in a particular pose. And a harmony is the feeling I get when I'm there.
Mm.
And that includes, what Ken said earlier. So your breath and, just how you feel and maybe, noticing your heart rate and all those other sort of physiological parameters that are a lot, that are normally much more passive and that we don't really notice the beat of our heart. And most of the time, we're not conscious of our breathing. We just do it. So harmony seems to be the integration of all of that. Balance seems to me to be bringing all those different aspects into balance. So it's much more active in my mind. That's how I feel about it anyway, as far as my yoga practice goes. And in science, so that's a good question. And now coming from my background where I don't know if we necessarily look at what's in either harmony or balance, because most of the time in science, especially in the world that I was, you work in a very isolated kind of theory or idea that you're trying to prove or disprove, let's say. And it's only one part, and you don't necessarily know a whole lot about everything else. You're really good at knowing that one aspect and what it means and the parameters that affect that. But that's not the whole picture.
Right.
And so that's to me, science is beautiful, and wondrous and great. But I think of it as almost, and as far as what I did, it was very compartmentalized.
But the instrument's practicing alone.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
So I can't speak to yoga. And I would probably think of the two disciplines, the words balance and harmony are going to show up there a heck of a lot more than they seem to in science. Because the scientific method is built on an assumption that whatever you know right now it's got a shelf life. So there's the scientific method is to take whatever the norm and whatever and they don't use harmony or balance to describe how things are right now that I've heard. Jan, you might have heard differently, but I don't recall any doctors or anyone that I know that in manufacturing, most of which was based on some pretty hefty science. Uh, the interesting thing about the endeavor, to experiment and prove a theory, in most cases, if it's a change to conventional thinking, I think harmony and balance are just missing.
Or they were missing,
Yeah.
and now, but you don't know they were missing until you try to research it and disprove something. So I think it sounds like almost like there's a constant striving for a balance of some sort. You just don't know in science. You don't know what it is until you reach it, and then it can be changed.
Right. I mean, because if you have a hypothesis, that's what you think might be balance.
Mhm.
So based on whatever you did be previously, you now have brought something in and you're like, okay, I wonder. And that might totally make you rethink what your original theory
Mhm.
was.
Well, the
Which
thing
is
of it
probably why
is,
people love science.
What?
Why people love science is for that reason. There's always something to look at from a different angle, from different theory, a different point of view,
Hmm.
introducing something else. Yeah, I mean, could be anything.
so I'm curious, have you ever heard of a scientific discussion or symposium or anything where the words harmony or balance came up?
Nope.
Me too.
But maybe they should.
No, I love what you're saying. And I think, if you want to talk about a glaring missing to anybody that's on the outside of, clinical uh, medical practices and that sort of thing. And until I got to tell you, the last year or so, I have a new doctor because my doctor for the last 40 some years retired. Broke my heart and love her madly and miss her and all that. But this new gal that I've got is she's from Argentina. Very soft spoken, very quick to say, I don't know, but some people are suggesting, you know, real soft sell, as opposed to a couple of doctors that we had down in Florida that totally misdiagnosed based on the Socratic method, where they asked us a question and we answered it. Oh, you've got, they put us on medication for a week and it didn't work. And then we go back in again. No, that didn't work. Oh, how are you feeling now? Okay, you've got, and prescribe
Mm.
medication for that. I'm always a lot more impressed with somebody who says, let's see if we can find a non prescription way to resolve what's going on with you. And, to that end, I have no prescription medication. I just turned 69 years old and not a single prescription.
I was thinking about too, like living in harmony with the earth. We decided not to do that. We decided to try to dominate it and control it, and now we're paying by not doing that. So, and of course, there's a lot of people working to get back to that sort of harmony, but
That's
we
scary.
find out what happens when you don't live in harmony with good old Gaia there.
Well, I'm curious who you think made the decision to not do that. I don't think there was any thinking going on. It was like,
Oh,
the earth can take it,
yeah. Well,
when
that was
somebody else said, what the hell are you doing?
yeah. Oh, yeah, and it's all, well, learning probably, or just ignorance, and to nobody's fault specifically, but what's everybody doing? Where do we put that? We'll just throw it in the river or throw it in the ocean. They know how to clean themselves, that kind of thing.
It's
You want
very
to?
human. We often treat our own bodies that way.
You're
People will
absolutely right.
do things, they'll just pollute themselves, cigarettes or whatever, and they're just not tuned into the disharmony until the
Mhm.
dis-ease strikes,
Mhm.
and now you're left to be angry at someone for selling you the cigarettes, or you know saying, "Oh, what's it matter? I'm going to die anyway." Like people will have their justifications. So I think many people that were not in harmony with the earth didn't even notice. They were focused on other things, the
Mhm.
profit they were getting, or the value felt harmonious to them at the time until it doesn't. And unfortunately, it's a slow process. So generations go by, you
Mhm.
know, the, the people that created that disharmony lived and died maybe in harmony from their perspective anyway. So it's hard, and then they pass that on, you know
Mhm.
so I think you see a lot of that now, people who are pretty focused on going back to something because they're remembering it as being more in harmony than what they're presently experiencing. So so their solution is to try to recreate that feeling when things aren't static, because balance reinvents itself all the time. So now you got the balance word popping in there too.
It
Doesn't
feels like
excuse it,
balance.
but
Yeah. Well, balance is like something, well, I think you could probably, but to me, what I heard when you were speaking was like balance can be false. So you can tell yourself that your life is in balance by doing what you're doing, like you need to make more money, or you need to do this, or you need to, and to you it's in balance, and it doesn't matter who it hurts, or if it's influencing somebody in a bad way. But to you, it's like you just said, you die in balance, but I don't know if it's necessarily harmony.
Yeah, and it's, you always learn balance in a lot of ways can be an illusion. It's like the broken cup can sit on the table and the illusion of balance is there until someone breaks the table, and now the cup tumbles, and that, so you're trusting that it's in balance and it will stay that way, and that's not true. It's just in this moment
Mm,
it's perceived as being imbalanced, but the environment is ever changing, and our understanding and perception of it is ever changing. So, and it's funny, like when we talk about the business thing, the other side of my business is working with organizations like teams, right? And as this conversation has really kind of brought home the fact that that's all about helping the people learn to better harmonize. So, and it's funny because some groups I work with, they want to make jazz. They want to understand how to riff off of each other, very creative, very
mm,
entrepreneurial, that kind of thing. And then others, it's a fine-tuned symphony where everybody has a role and everybody has a skill that they have to hyper hone so that they can be directed in a way that
mm.
creates. So, but it's always harmony though, but then it expresses differently. And if someone's interested in the workshops that I'll do, it's usually because they're believing that there is a lack of balance in some element of their organization, and our solution isn't to restore balance, it's to create harmony,
Mhm.
and then the symptomatically balance will reappear for a while. But give them the skills to learn how to keep reharmonizing, and then you can more skillfully surf the waves of balance as they come and go. Yeah, this
Well,
has
yeah,
been an interesting metaphor. I'm going to be using this, I
I
think.
know, yeah, 'cause it seems so your job is to be the conductor, kind of to realize who wants to riff and who wants to, be a classical symphony, you know?
Yeah, actually, my job is really just to, I think of it like a flywheel. It's first, help them strengthen their understanding of themselves and each other. And when that happens, when they have that recognition, it triggers a deeper connection, like
Mhm,
between themselves, their work, how they work together, and then that creates evolution, personally, professionally, and organizationally, which leads to deeper understanding. And it just starts So they just have to keep pushing the flywheel on the understanding part. So I just give them some tools so that they have different ways to see each other and increase their ability to see through multiple lenses instead of just their own. So, and then all the rest of it kind of takes care of itself, but it's all in service to, the more you understand the tune that someone else can play or the diversity of instruments, that they have available to them, the easier it is to work with them and create harmonic experiences.
So it's not tell them what to do, it's show them how to be.
Yeah, I never tell anyone what to do.
Right.
It's
Like Bill was
I don't
saying, you
even
don't
tell
tell
them.
them.
Yeah, yeah. It's not even like use this language.
Right.
It's like write my presentations. I'll create a framework of language for different things that I do, and then the first thing I tell them is now you got to change it because your people, your culture, your organization, it's unique. So this is just a stepping off point. Now you got to do the work, and I'll help them do that part too. But
Yeah.
yeah, but it's all about, it's interesting if you think about any group, whether it's a business or even us, if you look forward to coming to a place where you can feel a sense of harmony, however that may express itself, and then that makes it enjoyable, even if there's stressors or disagreements or disconnection, a lack of balance. It's the harmony that keeps you coming back because that gives you a feeling of trust and safety in the relationship and the ability to express. I got like a whole new set of sales copy for my
I
website now.
know.
This is great.
So good. So good.
I'm thinking about why people practice, let's say, yoga for years and years and years, or why students come back for that reason. It's not because I think it's because that for the first time, maybe in their existence, for the first time in their existence, they feel like they're in harmony.
Yeah.
They have that feeling of what it's like to totally be, and I would say be present in a lot of ways. So aware of all the different aspects, the physiologically, emotionally, spiritually, and that they work in harmony. And so that's what keeps you coming back. It's kind of like that feeling. And then trying to, as much as you can't try to get there, it's like trying to fall asleep, but
Mm.
trying to get that back. It's like, oh, I'm going to go
Yeah.
back because I want it to happen again and again and again.
Yeah, it's funny, and you're right. Like I think that we just had that happen in the martial arts school. We had a woman who she's been gone for 15 years. She got her PhD. She's back at UConn. She left when she was 18 for schooling, and now she's back working at UConn. And she came back for classes, and the first words out of her mouth were, "I'm home."
Mm.
And there were some of the same people. Most of them have moved on in that period of time, but it's a harmonious place. And it just immediately she recognized it as being harmonious and she could just breathe into it, even though her teacher is now someone that she taught, like years
Mm.
ago. So it's really just kind of cool, the whole thing and how it just cycles through, and but the attraction is to that feeling, you
Mhm.
know, and part of what attracted her to coming back was recognizing that she was most in balance in her life when she had access to the people and the teachings. So she's feeling less imbalanced now as her life is going through transitions and changes, just healthy stuff. So she's stepping back into a place that can help her restore that sense of harmony.
Right. And I think that's why even for me, when I stopped practicing for a period of time, and then all of a sudden I go back, and then it's the kind of thing where I'm like, oh, now I know.
Yeah.
Now I remember I stopped for like a week or 2 weeks or a month, but now I'm there again. And then just, the whole thing is renewed because once you feel it and once it's there, it's quite easy for you to feel it again. Like, so it's like, you return, as they say.
So when you get back to that state where now have the language to describe as either harmonious or in balance. Is that the equilibrium that we're all trying to find when we're aware that we're not happy? Hmm. So there's an old saying that got me through my 20s, and that is that the reasonable man accepts things as they are. The unreasonable man cannot accept things as they are. Therefore, all progress is up to the unreasonable man.
Mhm.
So the other interesting thing in listening to how you were speaking, the whole notion of harmony and balance, um, it's a metaphor for something that doesn't have language. And it's the best we can do at any moment to come up with a word that most closely resembles that.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really interesting to me this time that we're in right now is the amount of money, energy, time, talent that's being invested in disruption. You know, just to totally break down whatever the old equilibrium, harmony, and balance used to be. And in many cases, it's not with an idea of anything better that they're going to put in place. It's no, we'll just tear it down for the sake of tearing it down. And it makes me kind of suspicious of almost everything that I hear. And the reason that that is so is because I'm old enough to remember when we didn't have a choice but be harmonious. If you were not harmonious, that got dealt with very quickly. Anybody ever go to a Catholic school? By the second grade, I was taller than most of the nuns that were my teachers. Didn't make any difference. And so now, you know, there are campuses in the United States where they're not actually interested in giving anybody value for their educational dollar. They're training them to go out into the world and disrupt. And in many cases, these folks get out of college and they think that's what they're supposed to do, and they go do it for a minute. And there's enough culture here that immediately is dealt with. And I think, you know, to be more specific about it, I met this really beautiful young lady working at a pop store that sells all kinds of kids stuff. They had record albums, they had book bags and that sort of thing, you know, with ramen noodles on the outside of it for $65, which I failed to see the value of that in the larger world, but apparently there's a culture that really wants to have that. And so her makeup was to look like Raggedy Ann. Her hair was orange, and she had on uh, overalls, blue overalls, and she had a red checked shirt underneath it. And it was right around the time that I probably had done maybe 6 or 7 conversations and questions, simple questions for 100 people. So I just started chatting with her, and I said, "So I'm curious. You're working here at the mall. Is this a minimum wage job?" And she said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "Well, do you have a college degree?" And she said, "I do." She said, "I am a graduate from Sarah Lawrence, and I have a bachelor's degree in world uh, finance interpretation." And I said, "Well, what's the practical application for that?" And she said, "There really isn't any." And she described Sarah Lawrence as a queer school. And her name was Joshua. And her pronouns were they, them. And I said, so what kind of reception do you get having gone to Sarah Lawrence? And I'm thinking in my mind, that's got to be close to 200 grand, right? 4 years. When you go home, what does your family have to say about these changes? Did you go into Sarah Lawrence like this, or is this something that you acquired there? He said, no, I definitely wasn't this. My parents are devout Jewish people. And no, I never even heard of anything like this. And so when I asked her, what's it like to go home and talk to your family? And she said, it's really hard. And I said, wouldn't you like to be able to go and express yourself to them in terms that they could understand how you are as you are, and the experimentation and the exploration that you're doing in your own life? And she said, yeah, that would be really great. She said, I don't have many conversations with my dad. And I said, why do you think that is? She said, well, I don't know. I don't think he likes my choices. And I said, well, who paid for your college education? Long silence. He did. So the whole metaphor, I mean, in her world, I would say harmony and balance, it's missing that it's missing. And as someone who's trained to be a disruptor, and it starts, if anybody ever told me you should go to college so you can learn how to get minimum wage, I think I probably would have felt their forehead. Are you in there? So I brought that story up because I was fascinated in how Joshua got to be Joshua. And I asked her what her name was before Joshua. And she said, I never refer to that name. And I thanked her. And I asked her, can I give you a hug? And she said, absolutely. So as we're going through this time, I wonder, what kinds of thought provocations are going on for her all the time right now. And whatever she thought was going to be available for her, or whatever they thought was going to be available for them, I'm wondering if any of that has come to be. So I wouldn't have known to even ask any questions if we hadn't watched a TV show, and there's a woman on there who was non-binary. I'd never heard the words before in my life, but it was contemporaneous to that. And so I was curious. I just really wanted to hear I don't see these folks every day. And so each time I get an opportunity to ask a question that's open-ended and hear what they really have to say, I walked away from that and I looked at my son-in-law and my daughter and I said, I'm a blessed man. I can talk to anybody about anything, anytime. And you know what? They usually respond. That's a very, very cool place to be.
So I can share a little perspective because I've been seeing that from children who grow up into adults for about 22 years now. This is not new. So, and I think one of the things that's interesting about it is there's a couple things. So from that perspective alone, I think there's a shift in people being willing to question identity outside of it, in spite of pressure for norms that will grease the wheels and make their life easier. So, and I saw a lot of kids who were miserable until they decided to go through a very lengthy process of determining who they really were and getting their outside to match the inside. As a matter of fact, I know someone who's 80 years old who did this at 72 and and lived a whole life basically miserable until, until he made this shift and now is very happy and vibrant, so who am I to say, but the thing I find more interesting with the college thing, because I've been hearing this a lot lately, and I keep thinking about football because I've been a big football fan. And back in the 70s, it was a low scoring defensive game, you know,
Mhm.
people wanted to pay to watch touchdowns. So they have slowly over time changed the rules. The way that the game is played is different, and the rules have been adjusted to make it easier for the offense to score on the defense. There's just like how far away a cornerback needs to be before they can touch a wide receiver. They've got 5 yards, they can't press them off the line, all these things. So, and that was a direct result of it's a business, and that business is going to give the consumer what the consumer wants. And most universities are businesses. And, there's been a lot of talk about the fact that their job now is to get their customers to continue to pay them. So those customers are the students, and where the students are willing to go is the places they feel most comfortable going. So if that's what those students want, is that experience, that's where they're going to go. I mean, I can remember in the 80s, there were people who would not want to go to a dry campus because they wanted to drink. So a university had to be willing to not get certain students if they weren't willing to allow alcohol. you know so you've got 18 to 22-year-olds with partially formed brains put into an environment of discovery, raging hormones, experimentation anyway. And now the university's commitment isn't to doing what they feel their institution needs to do to mold them. It's adapting to whatever people will pay them for.
Mm.
So do you really have something where these universities are doing any kind of conditioning or, left leaning, right leaning, whatever? Or is this just human beings evolving and questioning things and having certain expectations, and the universities then just following the money, the path of least resistance? Tell you, I would not have my dojo wouldn't look the way it is if I let the students determine how we teach. But at the same time, our dojo has evolved and is evolving again currently because of the needs that the community has, and they're different from what they were 15 years ago. So I have to constantly balance losing money, repelling certain people, by staying true to our values and what we feel is important, while also being receptive to a changing need, because the 8-year-olds we're dealing with now are the same and very different from the 8-year-olds from 1995. So it's an interesting balancing act. And I'll give you one more example. You just had, Fox News got sued crazily. They got more lawsuits, and what's come out through the court depositions is the fact that in the end, they were going to lose their customers if they didn't continue to propagate lies. So they chose to propagate the lies, and they have it just documented. They're like, if we don't say this, people are going to go to another news station. So they didn't lie to be manipulative. They lied to stay in business because that's what their customer told them they wanted. So I think that it's just interesting how, we have to be thinking multidimensionally. It's not, there's a cause and effect that's working dynamically in multiple directions simultaneously, which makes it complex. And there's risk in just judging something on the surface by what we're seeing, when there's probably other second and third order consequences that went behind it.
Well, by the way, they were sued in a defamation suit for talking about a company, and the company said, no, you're lying. And they said, it's going to cost us more to win against you than it will to pay you off. What do you want? So be careful, because what you just said about Fox News, I'm pretty sure none of us know what really happened there. And again, what you and I are talking about is our experiences, and based on what we've seen and heard and saw, and coming full cycle back to harmony and balance once it is has been internalized as information that we will repeat to other people. Like, for instance, my story about the young lady. She's still a woman, has all a woman's attributes. She hasn't transitioned. She just is non-binary and likes to look like Raggedy Ann. And the man that you're talking about at 72, that's the right time to make that decision, isn't it? Got a whole lifetime of saying, I'm going to try something else. And that's courageous, in my opinion, you know? And the other neat thing too is that just as there are, how many thousand colleges in the United States and in the world, there's that many dojos too.
Mhm.
Do you think there's dojos out there somewhere where they now have students that want to learn how to hurt people? And that's what their focus is on, as opposed to
Oh,
your
absolutely.
dojo, as to your dojo is about, using kind of like the Vince Lombardi, or the coaching method, which is, we're going to turn you into a human being that can stand yourself. We're going to turn you into somebody that's going to be thoughtful in the community and in the world. And at the end of the day, if more people were like you, Ken, this world would have an unreasonable amount of really great people. And I
Well, and
appreciate.
all you can do is model it. But, and I think you do, you have to be careful. Like my, what I did was I looked at court depositions and actual testimony under oath. And that was, because it's funny how it's really easy to kind of make everything sort of hazy. And yes, there's always information, but the reality of it is, I think I can pretty definitively say there were choices being made to continue to foster something that was not fully true. And regardless of how it got settled in court and everything, people do this all the time. They say things because that's how they keep their business, So, and to me, it just makes sense. The lesson I took away from it is we have a responsibility as the audience we have a lot of sway and power over the behavior of institutions. And we can encourage better behavior, but we can just as easily encourage bad behavior, if we feed energy into that. And I think that and there is an audience that encouraged not journalism with integrity, so you can argue the semantics of how bad it was or how good it was, but there's no question there are choices being made that the audience influenced in a negative way, so, and I wonder if you're not seeing that in other institutions, whether it's universities or, you're seeing it in politics too. So, you know
Absolutely. And what I said to you was to just demonstrate that for every opinion, there's another opinion that's equally in balance and in harmony with the certainty of what you know and what you.
I think we lost Lisa.
Yeah, and I think it's time for us to wrap because it's going pretty late. But in the
Yeah.
meantime, I love that we got into an area where almost all of our information that we're using to judge a situation would be coming second or third hand from other sources, which I love. We don't get to see that very often. So my point is this: I'm looking forward to seeing you for dinner, and we'll have a really good conversation there. But as it stands right now, we'll have to leave this, whether or not it's totally in the empowerment zone. I say it is. And I also say there's an awful lot of room in this world for people of reasonable minds to have different opinions about different things. And I think Lisa got bumped by accident.
Yeah, I think she got knocked off. She's trying to come back.
So we're waiting for our leader here.
There she is.
Welcome back. So we're just kind of wrapping up, and the last thing that I said was it's really wonderful that people of thinking minds can have a completely different set of shall we just call them equilibrium and balance sentences that are understood and have been grappled with, and Ken has done the work, to be able to say what he said, as have I, as have you. And whatever work has been done that comes out of other people's mouth, that's what's being said too. So if people can just look for where harmony and balance are missing, now that we've brought those metaphors into existence here, and I hope you won't try to trademark or copyright those, Ken, because I think the rest of the world can get a lot out of them.
No, that's just, I think that'll just help me when I'm talking to people.
Yeah.
I liked that. That was a really clear and fun metaphor that I think people will relate to easily,
Absolutely. Lisa, did you have anything else?
No.
Jan?
No, thank you.
Ken?
Nope, I am good.
Well, I want to first say I love you all. I always will. And then I also want to invite, and that includes all you folks at home too, I want to invite you to call somebody that you love and care about and let them know. Text, email, telephone call. Just call them up and let them know that the world's a better place because they're in it. And that is this week's episode of Lighting the Candle, A World That Works. And you can always get back to a world that works. I promise you that. Bye for now.
What did we?
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us each week as well as the rest of the network at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts.